presenters every year. And he has to be one of the most quoted people of 2020. It seems like in the world, not just in the US, but every time I'm reading an article or something, there's a quote by him. So always a great presenter. I'm really looking forward to what he has to share this year. I'd like to introduce the Port of Los Angeles's Executive Director, Gene Seroka.
Great, thanks, Wink. Appreciate it and good seeing you. Nick, thank you for the invitation once again to join the 8th Annual Global Supply Chain Excellence Summit. It's a real treat to be with you again this year.
Thank you, Jim.
I understand that we're going to present a few slides and then have just a little bit of time for Q&A with the audience that's joined. So I'll jump right into it. Over the past 2.5 years, we have witnessed two really profound impacts to our supply chain, specifically in the Trans-Pacific theater, but also in all east-west and north-south trade lanes that we participate. The global supply chain has been disrupted by both the trade tensions between the United States and China, as well as the overall look at COVID-19 and the various economic and public safety responses that we've witnessed. Manufacturing is shifting away from China to Southeast and South Asia. We are seeing cargo routing moving more westbound through the Suez Canal to U.S. East and Gulf Coast ports that are less costly and less regulated. Today, while we see demand increasing, and as witnessed by the last 3 months worth of import volume coming through the nation's largest trade gateway, we're seeing a lot of replenishment at the retail level, online, for home improvement, and through the omni-channel distribution network that we serve. Year to date through the end of September, we're at about 85, almost 90% of normal volume for the first 9 months of the year, but it's been extremely choppy. As we stared into the abyss of what March looked like for us on a trade placement survey, at the same time, we've also seen volume more than double in the month of August from that low point earlier this spring. We commented early on that we would probably see at least 3 pendulum effects of volume and movement of cargo, and we have. Rush of imports, replenishment, and feeding our system to get down to the store and to the omni-channel level, but also a big movement in the opposite directions of repositioning empty containers back to Asia to get ready for the next round of imports. In all, what had us looking at this very closely and trying to figure out this unique formula was the fact that, very simply, lower cargo volume at America's port means fewer jobs. And while we have seen these upticks in imports over the past several months, we are now seeing a widening of the trade gap and to levels that we had not witnessed before. We are right now at about 5 imports to every export container through the Port of Los Angeles, which is causing displacement of assets and staffing across the ecosystem of service providers. Once a week, we fly a drone over the port to take a look at this complex of 7,500 acres from a public safety perspective. And led by Port Police Chief and Head of Public Safety, Tom Gazy, we also have a look at our terminals, the operations of our vessels, rail and truck connectors. And as the American economy attempts to reemerge, we have room to grow, although we're quite busy right now with what many have termed to be a one-way trade. That displacement of truck power and drivers, the assets of the Western railroads and our short line railroad, the PHL, are taking a different look at the supply chain right now. In addition, we've seen dwell times increase, whether they be on our terminal docks or equally as important out on the street at distribution centers, stores, and warehouses. We have a different look at warehouse staffing now because of COVID-19 and the requirement for physical distancing, making sure that crews can manage not only the cargo, but more importantly, their health and physical safety. All in all, nothing really abnormal, but it's very important that we have a line of sight as to the cargo that's coming our way so that we can pre-position assets and plan for staffing as appropriate to meet and manage these surges. These two hits to the overall global economy started to take shape in 2019 as we saw for the first time in 3 calendar years a loss of cargo or a slowing of that movement due to the ongoing trade tensions. Now coupled with COVID-19 and the essential shuttering of the United States economy, we'll be at our lowest point since the Great Recession more than a decade ago. And please remember, it took this port complex nearly 10 years to recover the volume that it had pre-recession. We were very determined. We're not going to wait that long again. Yet, as our current outlook continues to be fluid, we will definitely be down, but hopefully less than 10 percentage points compared to calendar year 2019. Our other lines of business that are also so important to our customers are down in resounding fashion. Automobiles have seen a recent uptick, but with zero APRs, zero money down, trying to push these cars that have been completed out of the dealer's lots have been of paramount importance. We'll be down year over year in the automotive sector overall, not just here at the Port of Los Angeles. Both scrap metal and steel have been impacted by tariffs. Petroleum is a usage case where not only have many of us been telecommuting and not driving as much, but it was a less harsh winter and spring in the Northeast and in the upper Midwest. And also our own LAX airport at its lowest saw a 97% decline in takeoffs and landings, less use of our jet fuel that comes through the Port of Los Angeles. Cruise business effectively shuttered in March of this year. And while there are hopes of recovery until there is some solution created around curbing and ultimately eradicating this virus, the experts in this industry will continue to work around the clock to find ways to service their customer base. And lastly, our fruit season, traditionally emanating from the west coast of Latin America, closed without any impact, but we are looking forward now to the end of November, early December for the next harvest, and watching closely as to the flow of cargo in that all-important trade for us here in Los Angeles. Much has been made about how we as a country respond to COVID-19. Here in Los Angeles, just an example of the vision of Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti. And along with the work of Governor Gavin Newsom in early March, in an assistance play to help alleviate the pressure on our landside hospitals so they could treat any potential surge in COVID-19 patients, we at the Port of Los Angeles welcomed the United States Navy ship Mercy, an 800-bed floating hospital that was docked right here in Los Angeles to help with the treatment of non-COVID-19 patients. And while never utilized to its full capacity, it was a pre-positioned asset with the greatest talent around the world to help our medically ill at a time of need. We've also put out a large number of testing applications right here on our docks for our longshore men and women and those associated with work here at our port every day. These large testing protocols were enabled by Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti and Los Angeles Fire Department Chief Ralph Terrasas in coordination with the port and the port police. In late March, we also took a look at what it would take to get critical supplies to our frontline medical workers. And with that announcement, Mayor Garcetti created Logistics Victory Los Angeles, a response to COVID-19 in a humanitarian way to get the critical personal protective equipment to our frontline medical workers and industrial equipment to those critical workers in the transportation sector. To date, Love LA has supplied more than 36 Los Angeles area hospitals, 105 skilled nursing and care facilities with more than 2.8 million units of PPE. And born from this was the relationship with the iconic American company Honeywell in a contract for 24 million of those precious N95 masks that were purchased at a leading price of 79 cents per unit, plus tax. No markup, no margin in how we would swiftly move these N95s out to our frontline medical workers. And in addition, philanthropy was never at a shinier moment than when we started to receive products from some of our long and trusted partners here at the Port of Los Angeles: Harbor Freight and Tools, shipping giant CMA CGM, the Apple Corporation, Next Trucking right here in Gardena, and so many others, to help us with gifts that we passed on at no cost to our hospitals and care facilities. With all of this, both the impacts of COVID-19 and the trade tensions, it's my belief that we must reinvent ourselves. And in addition to other tactical moves, I have now called for a nationwide export strategy. Nothing could be seen out of this trade tension more than a widening trade gap, which puts tremendous pressure on the assets, staffing, and capabilities of our service providers throughout the land transport and ocean networks. We know that from these trade tensions, we will lose 10 to 15% of our import cargo, and that's on top of market share losses of the past generation. If I'm right, we're going to be focused on agricultural products along with forestry, manufacturing broadly, the automotive sector and its tiered suppliers, which will help us better balance our trade and produce a lower cost to serve. And if that formula pans out, we will become a more attractive trade gateway for that logistics decision maker, which can align us with bringing folks back to work on the longshore trucking, logistics, and rail side of our business much quicker than others had anticipated. And all of this work to take into account what round trip and triangulated economics could mean and how we could better place ourselves as the gateway of choice. And therefore, looking into the future, our business imperatives all start with technology, where we own and operate the co-created first and only port community system in the United States. I have now called for a nationwide port community application with open architecture and agreed upon standards so everyone can join, but giving the cargo owner a view so they can have choice, whether it's matching up where containers are for the export community driven off imports mainly to major metropolitan areas, and the look as to how cargo can be shipped more efficiently, whether it be through the East or Gulf Coast, or trying to match back here and design those round trip economics for the West Coast gateway. I've also put together a first ever collaboration of West Coast Coalition of Business Interests to answer the question of port competitiveness, comprised of longshore labor up and down the West Coast, the Employers Association, the 5 West Coast container ports, the 2 Western railroads. The work on this is ongoing, but our answer to these questions are how we can drive cargo, reduce costs, be in sync with how we manage our financial capabilities, and align ourselves for policy decisions. Where the East Coast and Gulf Coast ports have reaped 10 times the amount of federal investment than the West Coast over the past 10 years, we must answer that question of competitiveness. And through all of this, an additional focus on exports that mirror that of Los Angeles are also being considered. Through all of this and our prudent financial policies, we have continued our infrastructure investment through cycle on both the physical, bricks and mortar, as well as the digital side of our business. It's also kept more than 3,000 construction workers per annum on the job during our darkest economic times. And with all of this, the pre-planning on workforce training and development to ensure we have the proper talent located situationally at the appropriate times for our recapture of business. And in the end, more cargo means more jobs at America's port. And that port community system has created a resounding influence on what it means for transparency. Having a partnership laid out with United States Customs and Border Protection for 5 years, it gives us early access to import information that is shared with Western railroads, our short line, chassis providers, truckers, the forwarder and broker community, designed and developed in conjunction with all of those and our cargo owners. The look at this makes for more succinct planning and making sure that we take advantage of the information to manage irregularities in the supply chain better than maybe we have shown in the past. And born from that, launched just last month in September, the Port of Los Angeles Signal, which gives a very succinct upstream look 3 weeks in advance of what cargo flows are going to be coming through the Port of Los Angeles. Shared with our port community and ecosystem partners, it's a look at how much cargo is coming in, what will be moved by truck, what will be moved on dock rail, and those that need short haul truck to our near dock rail facilities. Never have we seen this succinct amount of aggregated data shared with our partners. There's much more work to do in this area of digitization, including adoption by others, but this is a very good start gaining traction to help prepare folks for spikes as well as ebbs in the flow of goods. And all of that must come with a skilled workforce. We began several years back under the guidance of Aveen Sharma, the director of our Workforce Training and Development and Labor Relations Division, to match up the PMA, the Employers Association, along with our longshore workforce to develop a high road training partnership led by California State Labor Secretary Julie Su. This work on lashing and its environment for bigger ships was groundbreaking in and of itself, but will lead to other areas of collaboration and training where the state, county, city, and port can also lean in with investment dollars, real estate capabilities, and the acceleration to market for these all-important training needs. We've also, for the first time, put together a labor collaborative made up of the 11 leading organized labor unions here in Southern California under the guidance of the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor. And the work overall that has been done by Ron Herrera as president of County Fed really deserves applause. Here again, we have our aspirations set very high, but the initial conversations that began earlier this year in leading to what is necessary for the workforce of the future has been paramount to our guidance for the acceleration of training, development, and bringing more jobs here to the port complex. And then overall, we'll look forward to developing our own workforce training and development center right here on port property. What it's not is to take over for any training acumen and delivery that has been known for our organized labor units across the board, but something that augments and adds on top of what they are trying to do individually and what we can have the power to do collectively. Whether it be training for Class B driver's licenses, getting welders on deck, tire changers, or more importantly, giving that added boost to training curriculum that already exists, it's a clean slate for us to really drive this property. It could be 15, 20, 25 acres of land that is converted to classroom training, as well as on-site training for these skilled labor jobs away from an active terminal operation to preserve safety and security of our worker, while also making sure that the continuity of operations remains in place. It's been a very busy 12 months, Nick, since we last spoke with the group, but pleased at this point now to take any questions or comments that the audience may have.
So we do have one. What is the current import and export numbers between US and China? And what is the delta between this year and next year? Any forecast for next year?
Oh, good question, Wink. There is no doubt about it that we have been harmed by the trade policy that's been exhibited between the two countries. Not only that of the United States, but the retaliatory tariffs and positioning that have been put in place. We have also, by trying to go after this bilateral theory of policy, have given sales leads to every other trading nation in the world, whether it's soybeans out of Brazil, steel coming from South America, and many other products on short-haul routes of the intra-Asia trade, the world's largest trade today. Next year remains up in the air. Obviously, policy will emanate from our nation's capital, but nothing will shift on a dime when it comes to the relations between China and the United States. And Wink, I can tell you this. I lived on the ground in China during SARS. I can explain firsthand what a viral epidemic looks like. I also know that working for a wholly foreign-owned enterprise of an American company operating 36 offices in China, trade between our two largest economies global is a necessity. But it's rules-based trade that will lead us to prosperity in the future. It's not free trade. It's not using tariffs for weaponization purposes. So we need to get down to discussion on what will be best for American companies and workers while bolstering trade. And as we know, Export jobs in the United States, according to the US Department of Labor, pay on average 17% more than jobs in other categories. So there is much at stake here and a lot that we don't read in the newspapers every day. But suffice it to say, I believe we will have strong people on the ground looking to advance those trade policies to create that opportunity for success. Next year's outlook is really a shot in the dark at this particular time. What we're seeing now on imports is a replenishment of inventories. We're not going to ball games or the movies, operas. We're not spending money on services. We typically are buying products online, going to our big box retailers and home improvement stores. They are trying to replenish inventories at a faster level than we're accustomed to. And a lot of the business is still coming out of China. That being said, migration to Southeast and South Asian nations is real. And as a global supply chain community, we need to continue to bring collectively our thoughts on best practices, infrastructure improvements, and what digital infrastructure can do to improve trade overall. And I know from our work with our overseas colleagues and customers, we have many people advocating for the same ideas.
Thank you, Gene. Always so informative.